We are back. It's Senators, Twins, Rangers, Expos, Rangers. You know, I'll tell you what, this is going good. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and my co-host of this relatively new project is Ron Rabinovitz and George.
How you doing, Ralph?
Yeah. How you doing, Ronnie? How you doing,
I'm doing
George?
good. I'm doing good.
Just fine, thank you. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Wow. We had a show a couple of weeks ago. First of all, Ronnie, welcome back. You were on the
Thank you.
You were sick, and gutted through the last show. We had no idea what you were going through, and you had some procedures, and you're better, and you're recovered.
I'm feeling great.
Yeah,
great.
you did a wonderful Dodgers show on this very network with Peter Trunk. Dodgers, A Tale of Two Cities. You did a great episode earlier in the week, and I know you're back at it, and you love baseball. You love life. That's the
I do.
I do. You always have a smile on your face. I think it comes from what both of you share. You had happy childhoods with good parents, and you knew you were loved, and they gave you a passion, both of you.
Right.
Well, you know what? It was interesting you said that, Ralph, because that was my upbringing. I mean, I was a baseball family member from the time I was born, so I've been around the game all of my life, and can thank my dad for being what he was, and my mother for being very understanding and you know, really deferring to my dad when it came to the baseball part, and it's been a love of my life forever. Again, I'm more of a baseball history person rather than the current game, but certainly any questions or any comments about, you know, baseball, I love to talk about the history of the game. And with Ron, I just wanted to, again, Ron, compliment you for doing that broadcast on the DH. You did, I mean, on the DL. You did great. And I didn't know it. I didn't know it until afterwards, and it was terrific. And we're certainly glad you're back to 100%.
Yeah, I'm feeling great, George. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, you're quite welcome.
Good. What you both have in common is that you both have an inordinate amount of knowledge about a franchise that basically is two cities, and there are many of those too many of those in baseball. Some with three. The Braves were in Boston,
Milwaukee,
and in Atlanta.
And in Atlanta, right.
Right. You got the St. Louis Browns became Baltimore. Boston Braves. We mentioned them. Of course, the New York Giants, the Brooklyn Dodgers moved.
The Philadelphia A's have gone from Philadelphia to Kansas City, and then the Kansas City Royals now are the Oakland A's. So you can actually say that the Philadelphia A's, their heritage really, today's Oakland A's really dated back to the Philadelphia A's.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
That's right. Absolutely.
Kansas City is a totally separate franchise.
Absolutely.
What I'd like to know from you guys is when it came time to expand, the Senators were having trouble in what was the situation that they became the Twins, a franchise team, and they became the Twins, and the new franchise became the new Washington Senators.
Right,
How
the
did
expansion
it come
Senators,
about?
right.
Things were so convoluted that it got to that. George, can you address that?
Well, I can only talk about what I know, and I think Hank Thomas or there's a couple other baseball historians with a little bit closer view on the actual transition from Washington to Minnesota. But I do know that as Clyde Deppner a couple of weeks ago talked about, Calvin Griffith, who had taken over ownership of the Washington Ball Club upon the death of his adopted father, Clark Griffith. Calvin wanted baseball to remain in Washington because of the historical precedent of the nation's capital with Major League Baseball. However, he had received such a wonderful offer from Minnesota that the deal that I understand that he made with Major League Baseball was he was going to move to Minnesota, but he wanted to have a baseball franchise in Washington, D.C. So the expansion Senators were born as a result of expansion. The California Angels were created for California, and Washington the expansion Senators were created for, the new expansion in 1961. And my father and people like Early Wynn, Mickey Vernon, Sid Hudson, they had all been players and teammates and good friends with the original Senators. And then with the expansion Senators, Mickey Vernon became the manager. My dad and Sid Hudson, my dad was the third base coach, Sid Hudson was the first base coach. Minnesota then had a new franchise, same ball club, but in a different city, and with the ownership of Calvin Griffith, and then he brought on, some of the current Twins that were great players in Washington, like, Harmon Killebrew and Allison and those guys.
Right.
And then Early Wynn, as
well,
I mentioned before. Yeah, Early Wynn and my dad were on the 68 Twins pitching staff, and of course they had been good friends in Washington. So there was a direct connection between Minnesota and Washington, and my dad was fortunate because he was involved in both the original Senators, the expansion Senators, and the Minnesota Twins.
And the Twins, he was. Yeah, that's right. That's
wow.
amazing.
Now that's a great trivia question. That is a winner. We'll save that for after.
I think it would be, Ralph. I'm not sure that there's that many people would even know, because I have people who call me all the time and they want to talk about baseball, and they say, well, the expansion Senators and the original Senators. I say, yeah, there is a link there, but the original Senators, who you may not know, are the current Minnesota Twins. And like people also
now,
say, well, the
drafting. I know with the Angels, they got off by 62. They were almost a contender.
Very good team. They went with youth. They came in fourth place, I think, in 62 with a winning record. And Washington was in the basement, but Washington had gone with aging veterans, and the Angels had gone on the draft with young players, and that happened to be, I think, the proper move for them, because they built a competitive ball club very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yes, they did.
And,
they sure did.
And it turns out that the manager of that team was Bill Rigney, former Giant. And didn't Rigney manage the Twins later on?
Yes, he did.
As well.
Yes, he did.
So incredible connection. Baseball is such a small world. What went wrong with the draft of the new Senators? Can you tell
I don't think, Ralph, I don't think anything went wrong. I think it was the philosophy that was involved. They wanted to get veterans who had proven themselves at the major league level, and that was fine. They had guys like Gene Woodling and Dale Long and Jim King and those caliber of players, and they did well for the first 2 months of the season, but then age caught up to them, and they went from playing 500 baseball the first 2 months to, at the end of the season, they were in last place, and I think they were like 61 and 100. So, they had a disastrous last 4 months of the season, and I think basically is because the veterans, the first couple months did well, but then age caught up to them, and the team faltered.
Right. I think that's right, George. I agree with you.
It's funny, Gene Woodling, did people think he was kind of over the hill at that time?
I can tell you personally, I don't want to keep jumping in here, but I can tell you personally, to give you an example. Gene Woodling and my dad were roommates with the Cleveland Indians in 1946. Roommates. In 1961, my dad's the third base coach for the expansion team, and Gene Woodling is the starting in the outfield.
And in 1962, he's a Met.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
So it really is amazing. 46. Go back. that's right after the war. Your dad was considered a wartime player. Is that?
Yes, he was, Ralph. He was. My dad was a wartime player because he had a 4F he was deferred by his draft board, so he was 4F, and which made him still eligible to play. But during the off season, he had to work in the defense industry facility in Trenton, New Jersey, building Avenger bombers for the war effort, and that was part of the agreement with Major League Baseball and President Roosevelt that any player who was declared 4F by their draft board would still be able to play baseball, but in the off season they had to work in a defense industry job.
Right, and
I wasn't aware of that. That's very
interesting. Old timers that played, that came back. I don't know if one of them was the Wayner brothers, one of the Wayner brothers, or I can't think of their names.
Ralph, I can tell you one thing. One of the great players, well, two of the great players that came back after the war, and they both served in combat-related job in the service, was Bob Feller. And Bob was involved in the military for 3 years as an anti-aircraft gunner on the USS Alabama, and then came back and, won 26 games in 1946 and pitched a no-hitter against the Yankees in April that year. And Hank Greenberg, who had come back at the end of the 1945 season and didn't pitch. He hit a grand slam ninth-inning home run on the last day of the regular season to give the Detroit Tigers the American League pennant over the second-place Washington Senators. So there's two outstanding future Hall of Fame players who made a major contribution to Major League Baseball immediately following their military service.
Right.
You know what's
they
interesting,
were great
too,
before they went in, too.
They were great, sure, before they went in. But it's amazing how so many of these players were interrupted by the war, right?
Right.
They were interrupted by the war, and you just think how much their statistics would have been even better had they not had that interruption, because they were great before they left for the war, and they were great afterwards.
Well, that's right, and both of them had tremendous statistics, but one player, and I'll bring him up because, again, we're talking about Washington, was Cecil Travis. Cecil Travis was a terrific ball player. 1941 was second to Ted Williams in batting average when Williams hit .406. Well, Cecil served 3 years in the military, had his feet frozen in Battle of the Bulge, came back and was never able to regain his timing, and went from hitting .359 to hitting like .216, and then 2 years later, 1947, retired because of the fact that he was not able to regain his timing and didn't want to be remembered as an old has-been ball player. But Cecil Travis, as great as he was and as great an individual performer, never received even one vote for consideration for the Hall of Fame, which to me is a travesty.
That's a travesty.
Right.
That is.
Yes.
It is.
Just given that the war itself interrupted his career.
Absolutely.
Right.
And, that was the war that had a meaning. If you look back in that war, if anything is worth fighting for, that was it. And
that was it. Right.
Things have changed. We've been coerced into wars.
Yeah.
There are police actions. There this, that, and the other thing. But that was it for
the entire country, and not only ball players, but the entire country. Ralph and Ron was united behind the effort to defeat Nazi Germany and Japan during World War II.
Absolutely.
And the fact is that the country, there wasn't any people saying, well, we're going to be anti-war, we're going to be this and that and the other thing. They were all united, and ball players were just like anybody else. They wanted to do their part for their own country. And, we had in our DVD, we have about 80 Major League ball players who voluntarily left Major League Baseball to fight for Uncle Sam and then return to the Major Leagues after the war was over.
It was a true dedication. It truly was. And it wasn't, it was supported by Republicans, Democrats. It didn't matter. It was the whole country behind it.
Absolutely. It was the whole country. And the players, right. I can tell you, like my dad, who was 4F, my dad went up before his draft board 3 or 4 different times and was rejected each time. I mean, it's not that he was trying to get out of service, but right. he had a medical reason. And the draft board said to him, George, you have a shoulder separation which would not allow you to fight, use a gun or whatever, and therefore, you're being declared 4F. And the few players during World War II that were declared 4F, I mean, they were still playing, but they had really, many of their teammates were off in the service. So the Washington Ball Club itself had lost like 6 or 7 of the key players, to World War II because that was their first priority was to serve their country.
Sure. My father the same way. I mean, he tried to get enlisted and they rejected him.
Right.
And he tried a couple of times too.
Yeah, I mean, that was it, Ron. I mean, the players themselves, like my dad, I know personally, I mean, he would tell me about it. He'd say the first 2 years, 3 years of World War II, every year he would go up to the draft board and have his physical, and each year he would be rejected because of his shoulder separation.
Sure.
Interesting.
My father had psoriasis and over his whole body.
My dad had very bad vision. He immigrated from Europe, escaping the Nazis, and as part of becoming a citizen, he enlisted in the service and served stateside for 2 or 3 years, and got out in 1945. So, it's amazing. He went to Pittsburgh too. Was stationed in Pittsburgh. Always had a curiosity about Pittsburgh ball from that over the years. Do you guys remember Pete Gray? Off the subject a little bit.
I certainly do.
That was a phenomenon. That I'm reminded of Jim Abbott, who had a deformity, one arm.
Sure.
And
his was even more so because he was a pitcher.
His was worse. No.
Yeah, with a pitcher, right?
Yeah, he could swing the bat. He hit over 200. He wasn't liked. I don't know if it was on this show or somewhere. Somebody told me that he wasn't particularly liked by fellow players. Don't know what that was about. If that comes.
Ralph, are you talking about Pete Gray?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Pete Gray, from my understanding, and I didn't know Pete. My dad played against him only sparingly in '45, but my understanding was that Pete Gray, was not well liked. Although if you look back at wartime baseball, I mean, here's a player who obviously would not have been able to enter the military with just one arm, but he played for the St. Louis Browns and is on the cover of a book that's one of my favorites called Spartan Seasons, How Baseball Survived the Second World War. And there's a whole, couple of pages on the career of Pete Gray in 1945 when wartime baseball had taken such a large number of active major league players who were in the service, but, did leave an opportunity open for a guy like Pete Gray. And another person who I just wanted to bring up was Bert Shepard. And Bert Shepard and my dad were teammates for the Senators.
Am I correct about that?
Bert Shepard had a wooden leg. He was shot down over Germany.
Did he? Wow.
He was shot down over Germany, had his leg partially amputated by German doctors as a POW, was repatriated to the United States, loved baseball, had a potentially great career, convinced Clark Griffith to give him a chance, started as a batting practice pitcher, and actually pitched in one major league game and did quite well with his wooden leg.
Really?
Now the obvious problem with a player, the same thing happened when Monty Stratton with the White Sox shot his leg off. if you're a pitcher and you have a wooden leg, you can't get off the mound quick enough.
You can't get off, right.
Yeah, so players are going to bunt you, which is what they did. But Bert Shepard did have a, legitimate major league career in the fact that he actually played one major league game, is in the record books, and then before and afterwards, he was employed by Washington as a batting practice pitcher, and also spent a lot of time at Walter Reed Hospital, speaking with veterans who had suffered war injuries, and quite a few of my dad would tell me that quite a few of the veterans, because Walter Reed and Griffith Stadium were close, they would come by on home games and watch Bert Shepard pitch batting practice because he was such an inspiration.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? Wow, that is amazing.
That's a life well spent when you think about it.
Absolutely.
That was his goal. I mean, he wanted to, make a major league team, and he did, despite his horrible injuries. And there's pictures. I have a picture in that Spartan Seasons book where, Bert Shepard is sitting in the dugout with Ozzie Bluege, who was the manager of the team at that time, fitting his wooden leg.
I think I saw that picture on Facebook.
I believe I did too. I believe I did
in the
too.
last few days.
Yeah.
That's what
amazing.
I confuse as a fan. Now I'm thinking about it. I confuse Shepard and Stratton in my memory, given both pitched. Tell me about the story of Stratton, where he blew his own
well,
leg off.
I don't want to dominate this conversation, but
no, that's
quite all right. No.
Believe me,
Monty
not
Stratton
at all.
probably,
you're a maven, and that's what this show is about. Please don't.
Thank you.
You are amazing. No, please go on, Joe.
Monty Stratton, if people would remember the Stratton story, which starred Jimmy Stewart, and I think it was 1948, but it was the story of Monty Stratton. And Monty Stratton was a major league pitcher, destined to, have a very effective career, but in a hunting accident, not war related, but in a hunting accident prior to the 1938 season, shot his leg off with a shotgun.
His own
hunting accident?
Yes, he was climbing over a fence, and the gun discharged and apparently hit him in the leg, and he had to have the leg amputated. Well, in 1939, he came back to try to pitch, and we have color footage of Monty Stratton at Comiskey Park in 1939 in our DVD, trying to loosen up and pitch with his wooden leg. And my dad's comment and narration in the DVD was the fact that here's Monty Stratton trying to pitch on his wooden leg, but he wasn't able to, and then had to go into a coaching role or whatever, because the major league players at the time knew, again, with a wooden leg, he was not going to be able to get off the mound. So Monty Stratton had a similar situation to Bert Shepard, but Monty Stratton's was a self-inflicted wound, where Bert Shepard's was a military-related wound.
Military, yeah. Huh.
Wow,
amazing, amazing.
Did Stratton ever actually pitch, or was he just?
No, I don't think he pitched afterwards, Ralph. He was very effective prior to his.
He didn't have a major league record after that with the
Army. How was he as a pitcher before? George,
I think he was very effective. I don't have his statistics in front of me, but I think he was an established, major league pitcher. I don't think the White Sox were certainly world beaters at the time, but I think that he was a very effective pitcher. But after the accident, when he tried to come back, he just couldn't do it.
What a shame. What a shame. Yeah.
I want to ask you both your earliest memory of the first time you were in a ballpark. What was your memory? First, we'll start with Ron. First time you were
my first memory, of course, was one of the first memories was going to meet Jackie Robinson. We were in Milwaukee. The Dodgers were playing the Braves. He had sent me a note that he would love to meet me sometime. So the first memory I have is we were down in Milwaukee County Stadium. We always got tickets on the third base side, which was where the Dodgers dugout was. And to see Jackie Robinson running out in the outfield beforehand, we'd always go early for batting practice. And I saw number 42 running, and it was like, he of course didn't know me at that time. I had never met him yet, but
your
I was
dad
so
knew
excited.
you. Let's go back a little bit. He didn't just send little boys notes that he wanted to meet him. Your dad,
my dad wrote him a letter.
Him, said that you were his hero, and it'd be great on your birthday to send a note or this. That's how
he wrote a letter. He wrote a letter to Jackie, and he said, well, he used to tell me stories about Jackie. That was how it all started. And he said, how would you like to meet him someday? And I said, boy, would I love that. Well, unbeknownst to me, he wrote Jackie a letter and told him how much I admired him. And he didn't want to tell me that he wrote him in case he didn't respond. He didn't want me disappointed. So here I come home from school one day, and there laying on my bed, face down, was an envelope, and the back of the envelope, it said Jackie Robinson. And I jumped, I ran to my mother, and I said, Mom, I got a letter from Jackie. And then I opened it up, and there was this autograph picture, and there was this little note that said, I'd love to meet you in Milwaukee. So we went to a Dodger Brave game, and after the game, we went down to the locker room and waited for him to come out. And when he came out, I ran up to him with about 50 other kids, and I said, Jackie, I'm Ronnie Rabinovitz. And I said, do you remember me? He said, sure I do. And my dad's standing over my shoulder. He said, yeah, sure, Jackie. With the thousands of letters you get, how would you remember? He said, no, I remember your dad wrote me on lawyer stationery. My father was an attorney. And from that day on, that's how it all started.
That's a great story, Ron.
You guys both remember when return addresses were on the back of the envelope.
That's right.
Right.
I haven't seen that in years, but that brought it all back, something I wouldn't have thought about.
That's right.
Wow.
And I used to write to him, and I'd write Jackie Robinson, Stamford, Connecticut, no address, no zip code. He'd get it. He'd write Ronnie Rabinovitz, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, no address, no zip code. I'd get it. It was amazing.
That's the way it was in those days.
It's a changing world. But you know what? If they wrote you in Sheboygan today with no address, you'd still get it. It's still small. Sheboygan is...
it's about 48,000 people.
I don't think you would get that in New York or Philadelphia. You get return to sender. So
That's right.
Hey, you get return to sender if you had the complete address and you had the 17-digit zip code. Oftentimes you get return to sender. But that's another story. Right. George, when you were old enough your dad took you to the first game, or maybe your mom took you to watch your dad first game. Do you have memories of that?
Well, I have no memories of the first time because I was only a little baby at the time. I think I was about 6 months old when I saw my first game in my mother's arms at Griffith Stadium. But my mom used to laugh because about 3 or 4 years later, is probably 44, 45, and my mother and I are sitting at Griffith Stadium and watching a ball game, and there's a fan that's I guess on my dad pretty good about, in case you stink, and he had a bad game, maybe struck out, maybe had an error or whatever, and it was really giving my father a hard time. And my mother said that apparently what I did, I stood up and said, "You're talking about my daddy. I don't want you to talk that way." and apparently, the fan felt so embarrassed that here's this little kid telling him off that he sat down, never said another word the rest of the game.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Good
I love
memories,
it.
Gentlemen.
Good for you, George. Good for you.
Thank you.
All right.
That's amazing.
Hey, let's do it again next week, same time, same place. We'll get into a Minnesota twin. Kind of a preview of this season. Let's stay current. We have a lot of memories. Let's keep it current next week. And hey, this has been terrific. Love chatting with you guys. And for you folks out there, I hope you're enjoying it. We'll be back same time as Al Blumkin would say, same channel, same bat channel, same time, same bat channel. Thanks,
Thank you both. I enjoyed
fun.
it.
Take care, Ralph. Thank you, George. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye. We'll
Just
see you now.
that you both enjoy it is terrific. See you next week, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.